Hi, this is Shoshi Goldstein-Nissenbaum. Welcome to my podcast, Divorcing with Dignity. And today we are privileged to have Rebecca Saltzman, author of Balagan Be Gone. Rebecca holds a degree in fashion design from Parsons School of Design and for many years worked as a graphic designer. Rebecca's passion for environment and helping people improve their lives drove her to change careers and create Balagan Be Gone. Rebecca's straightforward approach and managing stuff and her no-nonsense ability to get to the heart of what is important combines with her people skills to help people get control of their lives through organization. By helping her clients streamline everything from clothing to papers to books and household goods, they have found that they get the most out of their possessions and stress less about managing it all. Her experience in moving her own household several times in combination with her organization planning and doing has led her to specialize in working with clients who are facing a move, whether upsizing or downsizing. She has found that her skills extend to helping others with time management as well. She is the author of Organized Jewish Life and the podcast host of Journey to Organization. Her monthly membership with the same name helps people declutter virtually in real time. And you can see all her social media links. And Rebecca, thanks for joining us today. And
thanks for having me.
We're talking about divorce, people getting divorced, post-divorce, considering divorce, and divorce equals balagan.
That's true.
That's what it is.
That is true.
Usually people are downsizing, their income is being cut, it's a total rehaul. But before we get to that, I just want to ask you, in your book, which thank you for sharing with me, is a chapter on divorce, which was very, I thought was very appropriate because it is part of the Jewish life cycle. And as you wrote in your book, it usually is ignored. So I'm just curious, what was your motivation? What inspired you to write about divorce and to include it in the Jewish life cycle, something which is not usually done?
Well, a couple of things. So I wrote this book because when my mom passed away, I felt like it was during Corona and I didn't really know how to sit Shiva like in practice, because when you want to sit Shiva, you're like gonna do it with your family, right? Like, or not when you want to sit Shiva, but when you sit Shiva, you do it usually with your family and you have like the generational knowledge that comes with it. But I ended up being by myself because my family is in America and I live in Israel. And so I didn't really like know what to do. So afterwards I was like, I'm going to write a checklist for how to sit Shiva. And so I did. And then I'm like, who wants this? And how will I even promote it? So I decided to make it part of a larger product, which is my book, Organized Jewish Life, where we really go through all the details of the Jewish life cycle. And there are a lot of them that are, like you said, overlooked because for whatever reason, usually it's because they're not joyous occasions, but they're still part of what we do and how we celebrate. And we don't have any to the point resources really that tell us how to manage these things in a practical way. Like, we understand that there are halachot surrounding them, but how do we apply those halachot and how can we organize ourselves around them? So I felt that it was a missing piece in the Jewish library, so I created it. One of the things that was really important to me, though, was not glossing over things that had happened to my mother. And my mother had been divorced previously before she married my father. So I come from the second marriage. And to me, it was really important to note, to let other people know that there are families that look like ours. And that doesn't mean that they're not happy or whatever the situation is, but it was important to just not gloss over it. I felt like it was also part of who I am.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thanks.
So let's start with household considerations, okay?
Okay.
Someone who's getting divorced and their life is a balagan, right? Which means everything around them is flying. And can you give us some tips on how, through keeping an organized mind, organized area, or your physical area is organized and misudar, how to do that when you're in an emotional turmoil, emotional balagan, and even not only through the divorce, but also post-divorce with all the kids going here, going there, trying to make a simcha together. It doesn't end with the divorce usually, the balagan. It's sometimes,
right.
It's an endless cycle. until the youngest child at least reaches adulthood. So what tips can you give us?
Okay, so this is a super broad subject, so let's break it down a little bit. The first thing is stuff. I think it's really important when you're separating to be clear about what stuff you really need and to be able to say to yourself and, your spouse, and your kids too, this is what we need, this is what we don't need. Now is an excellent time to let go of the things that really aren't serving you, because you don't want to pay to move them. You don't want to really deal with them. So it's best if you could just let go as much as you can. And this is where Pirkei Avot's teaching about more possessions, more worry really comes in handy, because if you can apply that to your life, you have enough to worry about when you're getting divorced and setting up a new house. Like, why do you want to also worry about your stuff? So whatever you can downsize and declutter is a win. And I know that there's going to be this very big feeling like, I might need this and this might come in handy. And you're not really sure what you need for this new stage in your life. And it's scary. But you can have faith that if you need something again, it will be able to present itself to you if you decide to let it go now. Like, things do not exist in a vacuum. We can get more things. And thankfully, we still have friends and family and other resources that we can lean on, even in times of struggle. And just as a side point, if you do need help, you do need to say something, because people can't read your mind, and you have to say something, be clear about what you need. But to the point, I think it's really, really important to just say, I'm okay if I can move on from this, because once I do that, I know I'm freeing myself up for more abundant things. And it doesn't necessarily have to be physical things, but just even making emotional space by letting go of the things that don't serve us. So that's one practical way to move forward in terms of stuff. But in terms of organization in general,
If I could
it's
comment
really,
one thing, that I find
yeah,
that sometimes when people are losing things, like losing their marriage, losing full-time custody, time with their children, they have a very difficult time parting with anything. Like,
that is
it's
true.
like little things that it's like tchotchkes that don't even necessarily have sentimental value, but they're theirs, they're their objects. They're their junk or stuff. You call it nicely stuff. I like that word. That's a much better word than junk. Um,
Well, I think the important thing to remember is that yes, it's hard, but having more stuff is not going to make it easier.
ah, see, that's
Okay. And so if you can say to yourself, like, it's okay to let this go, letting this go is going to free me up to get the things that I want. And because if you want something else and you don't make space for it, where will you put it? Right? So imagine it's in terms of divorce, I think it's a little bit trickier, but most of the time we just want to cross the finish line and get divorced, right? Like, we want that to happen. If we want that to happen, we have to make space in our emotional lives to do that. And in order to do that, letting go of the things that are attached to that is helpful. And it's my personal belief that removing the obstacles in the physical sense helps us get to the things that we want that are not tangible, because we have less holding us down. We have fewer excuses. It compels us to move forward. And it's sort of like a esoteric way to look at stuff, but we have to change our relationship with our things in order to move forward, because our relationships are changing. So we can't assume that everything is going to stay the same. And it's really scary when everything is changing all at once. You're in a new relationship status. You have to be in a relationship with yourself. You have to be in a good space with yourself. You're probably moving or downsize, and it with the move often comes downsizing, and there's just general change. And I think that when we can reduce the amount of stuff that we're responsible for, that makes all those other changes easier.
I
So,
think everyone, I know that when I listen to this again, I'm going to rewind and listen to that a few times.
it's really, in my own life, I am not divorced. I have never been divorced, but like I said, I come from the second family. I see the burden that comes with all that level of stuff. And when, I said my mom passed away and I was cleaning out the house and she had like pictures from her first wedding. And I'm like, but why? And I get that. But my sister didn't want it. And she had all of these things as a reminder. I get that it was hard for her to let it go, but I think that there's also an ideal here of what's going to happen to the stuff down the line that we have to consider, especially if you have kids. Like if you don't let go of this stuff now, you're going to have to do it at some point, or somebody else is going to have to do it for you. And why place that burden on yourself later or your kids later when you can take the steps to be emotionally healthy and let it go now? By letting it go now, you're putting yourself in a position of power and saying, I am able to let these things go and move myself forward. And that's a really big emotional step, and it's hard. That's something that I definitely help people with in my membership, but it's important and it's necessary. And you could do it before the move, or you could do it after the move, or you could do it in 10 years from now. But the longer you put it off, the more difficult it's going to be. And the more you're going to pay for it. So if you're moving stuff that you don't really want, that's going to cost you money. And I say this to people, not just who are getting divorced, but also like making aliyah. Like you're starting a new life. Do you want to take the old baggage with you? It's important to just make a clean break.
Yeah, I definitely know that. I have moved, I don't even know how many times in Israel. Yep, if I
It's
stay in a
hard.
place for longer than 2 years, it's like a big deal. Baruch Hashem, finally I bought Chaste Hashem, but it was a 20 years of Vayisa Vayachane, Vayisa
And it's
Vayachane. We
hard.
moved in the camp. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And
It's
it's
also
hard.
hard though, I have to say, I don't save anything, and that's also hard. Like there's some
Why?
kind of balance of having the things that you want to say that are important to you, and versus the extreme of being a pack rat and saving everything. And I wish
So people
there's
have this
certain things I wish I
misconception.
had saved that I didn't save. But
Really?
yeah,
So
there
people
are
have
some.
this misconception of me that I'm not sentimental, but I actually am. The key is if there are things that you want to save, to put them in one place together. They can't be like scattered all out through your belongings, because then all of a sudden they can trigger you, number one. But mainly when they're scattered all throughout the house and not in a contained way as sentimental items, what happens is you have trouble categorizing them and looking at them as a their own whole. So it's memorabilia, sentimental memorabilia, however you want to classify it, same word, same ideal, a different word. It doesn't matter. It has to be together. One of the most important organizational things that you can do, especially during this time, but also in general, is whatever you have, the like items are always together. And this is a general organizational rule that I hold all of my students to, which is you can't have the items scattered everywhere willy-nilly. If you do that, you're never going to be able to create any sort of seder or any sort of organizational system. So this is true with your paperwork. This is true with your bills. This is true with your kitchen items. This is true with your clothing. Keeping different things in different places is not going to help you. So if you decide that you want to keep sentimental items, that's fine. As long as you've committed a certain space to it, then and limit yourself to like a specific amount, like because there's a limit to how much we can actually care for. That's okay. You don't have to get rid of everything now, but curate your best collection of sentimental items. If there are things you're just not ready to let go of, that's fine. Get them all together, put them in a box, mark it sentimental, put it on the top of your closet, put a date on it where you revisit it, and then revisit it. But don't hold on to it forever as if it is, a holy grail. We can't hold on to things forever. Find a time when you can decide for yourself to let it go. Because when you can do that, you'll see that it's much easier to move into the future, which is
How
the
would you do
goal.
that with, let's say, like books, right? We're the nation of the book. You walk into Jewish
Yeah.
homes, tons of books. I'm thinking of my own house now. I have tons and tons of books. And throughout every time I moved, which was many times as I mentioned, I got rid of Svarim and books, I gave them away. And I still have so many books and Svarim that I am probably never going to touch again, but can't part with. What would your advice be on that?
So that's probably one of the questions I get the most. First of all, I'm just going to preface this by saying I'm an avid reader. Just on like non-religious books, I read probably 50 to 60 books a year. And that's not even with like whatever I'm learning on the side or, doing for my own personal growth, right? So this is just what I read. So I read a lot. And I would say, and this is my own personal practice. What I do is after I read a book, I pass it on. It has to be a 6-star book, like this is my favorite book ever for me to keep it. Unless there's some really reference material in it, like that I'll really go back and reference it. Like I have a few books that I reference, for work or in my learning or whatever. But I find that it's easier to just say, I've read this and look for my next book. I think this is very much there's two prongs to this. Also, in the Jewish book front, we want to make sure we have what's accessible to us to learn, right? But there's a limit to how much we can learn, and there's actually limits on what we're actually learning. So, for example, I've gone through the cycle of Tanakh. I'm already on my second cycle of Tanakh. I'm not going to get rid of my whole set. That's really important to me. I use it every time I go through the cycle, right? So I'm keeping that, but I've been able to reduce other books that we're not really using so that I can keep that set, right? And it's a constant reevaluation, but I think the important thing to remember is there's always going to be a way to get more. And this is what's really, really scary. And for me, this is like the key part of how I manage my own self is I believe that Hashem will always give me what I need when I need it. And because I believe that, even when it doesn't seem like that's true, even when I say, oh, I really need something, when I force myself to sit down and evaluate if it's a need or a want, I can usually find out that it's not a need, it's a want. But if it's a need, there's usually some way I can figure out how to get it. Either I can use something else that I have, or I have online resources, or I can ask a friend to borrow something, right? There's always some other way. There's always a plan C. Do you know what I mean? Like we can always find another solution in another way. And when we are looking towards the future and when we are trying to create new life for ourselves, we have to always look for what's going to help us the most in the future. Now, we don't know what's going to help us most in the future. So, in my opinion, the best thing to do is right now, let go of the things that aren't serving you right now. When you need them in the future, have faith that they'll come back for you. They'll find their way back to you. And by doing that now, by making space now, you let the abundance and the things that you need come to you now. If you're not using those things now, they're not serving you. And that's the purpose of stuff, to serve you. It's here for you. So if it's not serving you, why would you keep it? Look at yourself as the messenger, pass your bracha on to somebody else and say, I don't need this anymore. Can you now use this? And that's really essential to moving forward, no matter what stage of life you're at.
Wow, thank you. This is tremendous wisdom. It's not just applicable to organization. I think it's applicable to everything in life.
I think what very much surprises me is like this is the perfect way to apply what we learn about believing in God and having faith. When we need something, does it mean we're going to get it right this minute, what we need? No. Does it mean we will even get it at all? No. But understanding that God does whatever is best for us helps us see within stuff that either we have what we need or he'll bring it, and we can hope that he'll bring it. And I think that that's a really, really important ideal. The other thing that I think is important to remember here is that if you struggle with organization in any way, specifically time management, having more stuff is not going to help your struggle. So if you want to make your struggle easier, the more stuff you can get rid of, the easier life will be. Because we think like, oh, who cares if my bookshelves are full? I'm not thinking about my bookshelves until the roof gets wet and the books all get ruined, and then you have a flood and you have a bunch of moldy books and you have to figure out how to spend the next 2 days cleaning out this moldy area, right? Like, obviously that's not normal, what usually happens, but it could happen. And the more we have to be responsible for in those kinds of situations, the harder life becomes. So why not just let go so we have less to be responsible for? And now that your life is shifting and changing within divorce, there are so many other responsibilities that you're going to have. Why do you want to be responsible for stuff?
Right. Right. Because it's at the end of the day, it's just stuff.
Right. It's just stuff. You're probably not even using, I mean, there was a study done many years ago where I can't remember if it was exactly specifically for clothing or if it was stuff in general. We only use 20% of our things 80% of the time.
Wow.
And like, and I'm not saying like, okay, so if you have things for Hanukkah or Rosh Hashanah or Sukkot, like if you have those things, I'm not saying throw them out. I'm saying categorize them so they're together. When you need them, you'll pull them out all in one area and keep it to just the basic needs there. You know, I know that there's a lot of excess that goes around those, like lots of extra decorations, and we have a Yom Tov challah cover for each Yom Tov, right? Or we have like separate dishes that say Sukkot on them, and one for Hanukkah and one for Rosh Hashanah, right? Like, do we need
Nice.
them? No, we could use the regular Shabbos stuff, right? Like, it's nice, it's special, but if we're downsizing, those are the places we can minimize.
Right. Interesting that minimization, to be a minimalist, is very in style, and to
Yeah.
be, and yet those what the world calls a minimalist, it's like so much abundance already. Like it's just hiding your stuff, hiding your stuff neatly. It's not having less stuff. It's managing a lot of
So
stuff better.
I don't think that that's true, actually. I think that, first of all, I don't consider myself a minimalist. That's number one. I think people who really are minimalists, they really are living like a more bare lifestyle. I don't necessarily know that that is truly 100% possible if you're a Frum Jew, because think about all the things you have if you're a
Right.
Frum Jew that you wouldn't have. I mean, I would not have a challah board, a challah knife, candlesticks, a challah cover, a
At least two
shofar, a
sets of
sukkah,
everything.
2 sets of everything, right? Like there are so many things I wouldn't have if I
Right.
wasn't from.
But
And
what I
like,
meant before
so I,
was when you see these minimalists and their, all their social media, they have a lot of stuff. It's not like that's minimalism. Like, huh? They're pushing products for a minimalistic lifestyle, which is kind of contradictory. I'm not talking about like people
yes.
who are like, more Eastern mentality of like having less and sleeping on a mattress or, talking about
And there
the
are people who do
social
that.
media word. What?
Right. There are people who do that, and I'm totally down with that. And if you could get your lifestyle to do that, then great. But I would say even within like the upper levels of minimalism, for example, I could fit all of my clothes in one duffel bag. Like if I had to move tomorrow, I could just put all my stuff in one duffel bag and be
Wow.
done. Like, and that most people cannot say that. So like
Well,
I have, encapsulated the idea of capsule wardrobe into my life. I look for places where I can just have less.
I think
And
you have a lot of from women who couldn't fit all of their black skirts into one duffel bag.
right, but see, why do you need that? And that
Right.
goes back to like the 80-20 rule, right? Like if you look at what's in the laundry, and then the reason why I see so many from houses where there's laundry all over the sofa, clean laundry, because they can't get the stuff back into the cabinets because everything is too full. Like there's just too much to care for. And if you can reduce, you lose that problem,
You also have to be
right?
on your
So
toes though to be constantly doing laundry.
yeah, but let's be real. Who doesn't do laundry 2 or 3 times a week if you have a family? I mean, we are constantly running the
How about
washing
2 or 3
machine,
times a
probably every day.
day?
Right. I probably run the washer every single day. Literally, we could get by, with 7 days worth of clothes. Everyone, pretty much, with a few exceptions. If you have small kids who are, potty training or that kind of thing. But like, I'm not saying you need to only have 7 days of clothes. I'm just saying, imagine if you only had 7 days of clothes. If you knew that on Monday you wore this, and on Tuesday you wore that, on Wednesday you wore that, wouldn't that simplify your life and just make things easier for you? It sounds very austere, but actually it's amazing. Like, think about when you go on vacation. You've packed and you've planned and you know what you're going to wear and like everything is ready for you and that's all that you have. So that's all you can choose from. So if you minimize in that way and think about how relaxing vacation is, right? Like it's nice. You have everything you need right there. And if you don't have something that you need, there's always a drugstore. You can always
Big
go and get
deal.
something, right? Like, right. It's not that hard. So look at it in like a vacation sort of setting where I'm going to make my life more simple so that I can live my best life and give my kids the best life. And I'm going to simplify by reducing my clothes, reducing my kitchen, reducing my books so that I can do that. So I have less to take care of. And if I need something else, I'll get it again. Somehow, not necessarily I'll buy it. I'll put a shout out in a local group and I'll say, does anybody have this that they're giving away? Or, I mean, there are all sorts of ways to procure items.
True. It's very true. It's amazing. Well, I want to thank you, Rebecca. This was really, I have to say, it was very inspiring. I think there was a lot of
Well,
wisdom
thanks.
here, as I said earlier, which doesn't only apply to organization, but to decluttering a person's mind, decluttering their heart, keeping things simple, which is really freedom. The
Yeah,
freedom to be able
100%.
to move, right? To be able to grow and to be able to become what we want to become without being bogged down by physical clutter or stuff, right? I really like that word stuff, calling it stuff, not clutter, not junk, stuff. It also deserves a little bit of cover, right? You know, it's not all junk.
Right. Well, I think we have to make it neutral. Like it's not bad, it's not good. It's there. It's supposed to make our life easier. And
As
if
you
it's
said, it's
not
there
doing
for
that,
us to use. So if we're not
right.
using
If
it,
it's
then
not
it's
doing
time,
that,
right?
yalla
Time
bye.
to move on. Time to move on. Thank you so much. I hope maybe we'll meet
You're
again
welcome.
before Pesach. If you could think about,
Okay, let's do it.
if you could think
Let's
about Pesach now.
I think about Pesach all year long.
Oh, well, we all do. It's one of the six remembrances that we say every day, right?
I literally am always planning for Pesach.
For
That's like when I
Pesach.
do my biggest program is I do a
I'm
pre-Pesach
sure.
challenge where I declutter with everybody like about 50 days before Pesach so that you can declutter so that when you're ready to clean, it's chick-chock.
And it's just
And so I'm
cleaning.
always planning, right. And then it's just cleaning because you've already decluttered. All you have to do is just wipe it down, right? And then you're good to go. And that makes everything a lot less stressful when you do the prep work. So I'm always planning for that program.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.